Welcome back everyone, Oz here. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Ask Reddit. Medical professionals of Reddit, what was a time where a patient ignored you and almost died because of it? Had a throat cancer patient. We offered him surgery to remove the tumor. It was a fairly conservative surgery. He left because he didn't want a mutilating surgery, and his daughter-in-law had been studying magnet therapy and she was quite good with it, his words. He came back a year later and was out of reach from any treatment. His cancer was so advanced that there was nothing we could do for him. Patient came in with syncope and general malaise. Found out she had a tiny patch of skin cancer on her ear, which she hadn't treated in over a year because she wanted to go to a different hospital to have it removed and just hadn't found the time. It metastasized to her brain and I think other places. They gave her 5 months max. Did they even try essential oils? I'm a nurse and I had a very polite and lovely patient trying to remove all manner of chest tubes and IVs after a motorcycle accident. He was obviously delirious from the pain meds and the head injury, but very nice still. I left him in the care of my coworker for my lunch. 10 minutes into my lunch break, I see him stagger past the break room door like something out of The Walking Dead, trailing blood everywhere, only to collapse out cold a couple seconds later. Said he needed the bathroom. I don't know how the he pulled his own chest tubes out. Removing them always makes me cringe, let alone doing it to himself. He was put back to bed, this time in the ICU, and got some more sedation, and even though him ripping it out set him back a couple of weeks, he still discharged and came to say hi and thanks on the way out. The happiest, delirious patient I ever had. What a bloody trooper. We had a college student come into the ER and had a wonderful case of appendicitis. He needed to get to surgery ASAP, as surgery is way easier and safer if done before it ruptures. He called his parents to let them know, and they told him to refuse because he had a test upcoming in the week and they didn't want him to miss it. He left the ER against medical advice while we were all telling him that if your appendicitis gets worse and ruptures, it could definitely lead to death. The kid luckily comes back about 10 hours later after it ruptured. He gets the emergency surgery and the amount of time he got to spend in the hospital probably doubled. Had a repeat patient, not quite frequent flyer status, as a medic that would always call for a severe allergic reaction to the shellfish every other month or so. She had always had the allergy and knew her reactions were getting worse. After a year, 6 or 7 calls of this silliness, my crew and I stayed in the hospital ER with her and talked at length about the situation since she'd always stay mum about how it kept happening. She told us she comes from a patriarchal culture and her father made this amazing seafood soup. If she didn't eat it and force her body not to reject his gift to the family, she would lose her car, phone, or whatever punishment her father deemed necessary. We pleaded with her to do whatever it took to show him it was deadly and carry her EpiPens with her. Fast forward a few years when I altered course into nursing and joined that ER. Saw a familiar bloated face. Turns out she had gone off to college in another state and hadn't been home for a while, but had visited her folks for a holiday. Of course she had the soup, and despite hitting herself with the EpiPen when her throat started tightening, the reaction continued. Her mom, who I had never seen before, told me she tried to eat it fast and rushed to the bathroom, where she was found on the floor. Medics couldn't tube her in the field, so tried medical management until they could drive her to our ER. Doc performed a tracheotomy at the bedside, and she went to the ICU. Took a week for her to recover, and I was told by the ICU nurses that her father finally got it, that her allergy was a real medical condition. Had a patient stop taking his heart failure meds in favor of cocaine. My man. We had a mom in the newborn intensive care unit who would constantly kiss her premature baby on the mouth. Several nurses educated her around why that's not safe for the baby, and, thankfully, documented their teachings. This was during cold and flu season and became even more concerning when the mother was coming in with cold-like symptoms, coughing, sneezing, and obvious congestion. She still continued to kiss the baby right on the mouth. The baby was almost ready to go home by this time, but got extremely sick. The baby ended up with a ventilator and had quite the extended stay with many, many close calls. Oh my god, yeah. Family members can do as much damage as a non-compliant patient. Have had family members unrestrain an intubated patient after copious education on why it wasn't safe when the nurse wasn't looking. He self-extubated but was so fragile to survive it. So yeah, congratulations, you just killed your dad because the restraints bothered you. Have had family members cough in an immunosuppressed patient's face. Give them the flu. After being told to wash hands, wear a mask, probably added a month on their ICU stay. Poor sweetheart of a lady. I've read that the most common reason for a surgery to be reperformed is the patient not following doctor's orders during recovery. Doctor says, don't ride your bicycle for 6 weeks. Patient hears, don't ride your bicycle until you feel you can. My aunt had surgery to one eye. The recovery part was simple. Stay on your tummy, head down, closed. She had to redo the surgery 3 times. She would not listen. When I asked my mother why she wouldn't listen to the doctor's advice, she told me something along the lines of, oh, she did listen, but she got tired of being on her stomach, or she wanted to be at the restaurant with us, etc. Some people just don't think rules apply to them. Nothing will happen to them. Patient didn't die, but did lose an eye as a result. Young kid, 20, with bad diabetic retinopathy from uncontrolled DM type 1. Had eye surgery to remove the blood and scar tissue from inside the eye. We told him to take it easy for a few weeks. He went to Six Flags. Roller coasters are bad. Retina completely detached, eye got soft and painful, had to be removed. No. On every single ride they have those don't ride with a medical condition signs, and I always thought nobody would actually think about going on a roller coaster with a medical condition, especially when the hospital tells you not to do things like that. But apparently... Have you met people? When I was in medical school, I had a gentleman in his late 60s come in for chest pain, found to have a large heart attack, very impressive ST elevation myocardial infarction in left anterior descending artery by electrocardiogram. Refused emergent cardiac catheterization, go through the arteries and put a stent to open up the vessel of the heart so he could bring his car home and plan on taking an ambulance back to the hospital. He was in the parking ramp and it cost $20 per day to park. Came back by ambulance in full arrest, no pulse, and died. Doc had to call his son and explain what happened. He was like, yeah, that sounds like dad. He's always been cheap. EMT paramedic student here. So we had a patient who was morbidly obese and couldn't get out of his house. He decides after about 4 days of uncontrolled chest pain to call it in. Well, we get there and find evidence of several MIs, but refuses care and wants us to leave. About 45 minutes later, we get a call from the building he lived in, and we got there and it was him in full-blown cardiac arrest. This man was so obese that we couldn't get him through the door and had to knock out a wall and lift him down off the 2nd story with a lift. All the while, me and my paramedic lead were bagging him through an ET tube. Lots of firsts on that call. First ET tube I put in and first IO is ever seen done in the field. Why did he call you in the first place? Hey, check out my sick ass heart failure. It happened so often it was almost a non-issue. We would basically just shrug our shoulders and say, well, I had a patient who kept adjusting her insulin dosage against my advice because she was terrified of having her feet amputated like her mom. So she had several occasions of dangerously low blood sugar, one of which put her in the ICU. Had a lady who had the opposite problem, raging diabetes but in deep denial, so she would never take her insulin. So she was in the ICU multiple times for the diabetic ketoacidosis. Had a ton of patients on dialysis who skipped dialysis for whatever fucking reason. Didn't feel like going, had a fight with boyfriend who was her ride, took vacation to a city without a dialysis unit, etc, etc. So they would come in with their electrolytes all fucked and had to get emergency dialysis inpatient. Had a billion-old fat man with chest pain for weeks, refused to come into the hospital to be evaluated for cardiovascular issues, and either die at home or come back a week later with extensive MIs. Half of my patients with COPD were still active smokers despite my exhortations. One had burn scars over a third of his body from the last time he smoked around its O2 tank. Had patients take extra doses of benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium, etc., and end up in the hospital with overdoses. I worked in ER admissions throughout college. A teenager and his parents came in because he went over the handlebars on his bike. The staff wanted to keep him in observation overnight, but his parents refused, even after they offered to put him in a recovery room that was near the ER and normally only used during the day for outpatient surgeries. They came back the next day and he was white as a ghost. It turned out he had punctured some part of his digestive system and, I think, had some internal bleeding. It's the only true emergency surgery I saw in the 4 years I worked there where the staff actually ran to the OR with the patient. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of my AskReddit content, click on the playlist below or the end card screens. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.